5 of the most infamous killers from the state of Louisiana. Rest in peace to all victims.
Sit back and relax and check out the stories. Please like and subscribe to our channel.
Number 1. Ronald Joseph Dominique, the Bayou Strangler. One of the most prolific serial killers in Louisiana history, Dominique murdered at least 23 men and boys in southeastern Louisiana between 1997 and 2006. He would lure victims with promises of money, drugs, or sex, then rape and strangle them. Dominique pleaded guilty to multiple murders and was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms without parole. Crimes and modus operandi. Victims. His victims were primarily men and teenage boys, many of whom were homeless, transient, or struggling with drug addiction. Method. Dominique lured victims to his home with promises of sex, money, or drugs. Once there, he would bind them, often using their own clothing or rope, rape them, and then strangle or suffocate them to ensure they could not report the assault. Disposal. He dumped the bodies in remote locations across 9 different Louisiana parishes, including cane fields and drainage ditches. Deceptive persona. Dominique appeared non-threatening to his victims and neighbors. He was obese, had a heart condition, and used a cane for mobility. He held menial jobs as a pizza delivery driver and meter reader. Investigation and arrest. The break. In 2006, a man escaped Dominique's trailer and reported to police that he had been tied up and nearly killed. DNA match. Investigators linked Dominique to the crimes through a DNA sample he voluntarily provided, which matched evidence found on 2 victims in Jefferson Parish. Confession. Following his arrest on December 1, 2006, Dominique confessed to 23 murders to avoid the death penalty. Legal outcome and sentencing. Sentence. On September 23, 2008, Dominique pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder in Terrebonne Parish. Current status. He was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole and remains incarcerated at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola. Media coverage and portrayals. His case has been the subject of numerous documentaries and true crime books, including books, The Bayou Strangler, Louisiana's Most Gruesome Serial Killer by Fred Rosen. Films, documentaries, the 2011 documentary Bayou Blue, and episodes of series like Mark of a Serial Killer and Making a Serial Killer. Number 2. Derek Todd Lee, 1968 to 2016, known as the Baton Rouge serial killer, was an American serial killer and rapist who murdered at least 7 women in Louisiana between 1998 and 2003. Method. He often gained entry by pretending to be in need of help or by stalking victims before attacking them in their homes. Most victims were brutally beaten, raped, and either stabbed or strangled. Survivor. Diane Alexander is the only known person to survive an attack by Lee, July 2002. Her description and her son's sighting of Lee's vehicle were critical to the investigation. Serial killer survivor testifies against Lee, January 20, 2004. The woman police say is the only surviving victim of accused serial killer Derek Todd Lee testified Thursday in a pre-trial hearing. Diane Alexander, a nurse and Breaux Bridge resident, said during the hearing she is absolutely sure Lee is the man who entered her home and attempted to rape and kill her July 9, 2002. During her testimony, prosecutors asked Alexander if she recognized the man who attacked her. "He's sitting right there," Alexander said from the witness stand as she pointed her finger at Lee, who was seated with his defense attorneys. Applause and shouts of "yes" erupted from victims' families but quickly were hushed by courtroom officials. Alexander said she did not know the man who attacked her. The attacker tried to strangle her with a phone cord after the attempted rape. Sheriff's officers from St. Martin Parish, where Breaux Bridge is located, and FBI analysts used Alexander's description of her attacker for computerized and sketched profiles in July 2002 and for an updated profile in May 2003. In May 2003, St. Martin Parish Detective Arthur Boyd emailed Alexander a 6-photo lineup of suspects. She said she looked at the photos and identified suspect, No 5 inches Lee, as her attacker. Alexander said prior to that night she had never been shown a photo of Lee and had never heard the name, Derek Todd Lee. She had seen Lee only the day he attacked her. The main piece of evidence prosecutors introduced to try to connect Lee to more than one killing was a phone cord taken from Alexander's home. A piece of cord was cut and taken from Alexander's home, and a piece of cord was found in Whiskey Bay near Pam Kinnemore's body, witnesses said. Mark Karofsky, a forensic scientist with the Acadiana Criminalistics Laboratory, tested the cord that was found with a sample piece from the cord that remained in Alexander's home. He said the pieces were from the same, continuous length of cord. Thursday's testimonies were a part of the two-day pre-trial hearing in the first-degree murder case against Lee. He is charged with the May 2002 killing of university graduate Charlotte Murray Pace. Lee also is accused of killing 5 other South Louisiana women: Gina Wilson Green, Pam Kinamore, Carrie Lynn Yoder, Trinisha Dean Collum and Geraldine DeSoto. He has been officially charged with murder in only the Pace case. Prosecutors are asking Judge Richard Anderson if evidence from the other murder cases and the Alexander attempted rape and attempted murder case can be used in the Pace murder trial. In the hearings, attorneys did not use DNA matches as evidence. Defense attorneys did not receive DNA evidence with enough time to prepare for the hearing. Prosecutors will present DNA evidence at another pretrial hearing February 12 and 13. The Pace first-degree murder trial is set to begin in March. Evidence the defense likely will use to disconnect the killings include the manner in which victims were killed and where bodies were found. Some victims' deaths were attributed to strangulation, while others were attributed to stab wounds or beating. The bodies of Pace and Green were found in their homes. Kinamore and Yoder were found at Whiskey Bay, and Collum was found in a wooded area near Scott, north of Lafayette, after allegedly being abducted from her car. Prosecutors presented no evidence from the DeSoto case method. He often gained entry by pretending to be in need of help or by stalking victims before attacking them in their homes. Most victims were brutally beaten, raped, and either stabbed or strangled. Survivor. Diane Alexander is the only known person to survive an attack by Lee, July 2002. Her description and her son's sighting of Lee's vehicle were critical to the investigation. Investigation and arrest, profiling error. Early in the investigation, police focused on a white suspect based on psychological profiling, which allowed Lee, who was black, to continue his spree for years. DNA breakthrough. Advancements in DNA technology eventually linked evidence from multiple crime scenes to a single perpetrator. In May 2003, Lee voluntarily provided a DNA sample during an unrelated investigation in Zachary, Louisiana, which proved to be a match. Capture. After a short manhunt, Lee was arrested at a motel in Atlanta, Georgia, on May 27, 2003. Legal outcome and death. Sentencing. Lee was convicted in 2 separate trials in 2004. Geraldine DeSoto case, convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Charlotte Murray Pace case, convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Death. While awaiting execution on death row at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, Lee died on January 21, 2016, at age 47. His official cause of death was heart disease. Victims. Lee targeted women in the Baton Rouge and Lafayette areas. His confirmed victims include Randy Mebrewer, April 1998, Gina Wilson Green, September 2001, Geraldine Barr DeSoto, January 2002, Charlotte Murray Pace, May 2002, Pamela Kinamore, July 2002, Trinisha Dene Collum, November 2002, Carrie Lynn Yoder, March 2003.
It's the moment when a team of detectives realized they had matched DNA to South Louisiana serial killer Derek Todd Lee. That was 13 years ago. Former Baton Rouge Police Chief Pat Englade remembers the 20-hour days he worked trying to find the man who tormented this entire community.
This is one of the most traumatic things that's ever happened in this city, and I think that this is, today we can look at it and say that, justice was done.
Behind the scenes, the South Louisiana Serial Killer Task Force mobilized, hunting down every lead as women kept turning up murdered.
My biggest fear is if we don't catch him, another victim's going to show up, and that's a heavy burden to carry.
Tracy McNeely knew Derek Todd Lee her entire life. She says his charm is how he managed to trick so many women. Lee even had her fooled.
A couple weeks before they captured him in Atlanta, he saw me and my mom at a gas station.
She remembers that chance encounter and just how polite Lee was. That charm still there, even after DNA linked him to the deaths of 7 women, and he hadn't been caught yet. As people who knew him reflect on the pain he caused so many people, Englade is still haunted by the horrific way Lee treated his victims.
I've seen too many people, lives affected by death, but somehow I think Derek Todd Lee needed to die for what he did to these people.
Number 3, Sean Vincent Gillis, born June 24, 1962, often referred to as the other Baton Rouge killer, is an American serial killer and necrophile who murdered at least 8 women in Louisiana between 1994 and 2004. He operated during the same period as the more high-profile killer, Derek Todd Lee. Another creep and bozo method, he typically strangled or stabbed his victims, often using zip ties as ligatures. Postmortem violence. Gillis was known for extreme postmortem depravity, including mutilation, dismemberment, and necrophilia. He admitted to keeping trophies and, in some cases, cannibalizing parts of his victims. Motivation. He described himself as pure evil and admitted he sometimes killed without knowing why, though he expressed a fear of being outdone by Derek Todd Lee. Investigation and arrest. The clue. He was caught after investigators found unique tire tracks near Donna Bennett Johnston's body. The tracks were traced to a rare set of Goodyear tires owned by only about 90 to 100 people in the Baton Rouge area. Capture. Gillis voluntarily provided a DNA sample, which matched evidence from several crime scenes. He was arrested on April 29, 2004. Legal outcome and current status. Sentencing. To avoid the death penalty, Gillis pleaded guilty to several murders. Following a 2008 trial where the jury deadlocked on the death penalty, he received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. Incarceration. As of 2026, he remains imprisoned at the Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola. He is housed in preventative segregation due to his high-profile status and the nature of his crimes. Gillis primarily targeted women in the Baton Rouge and Lafayette areas. His confirmed victims include Ann Bryan, March 1994, 81, murdered in her retirement home. Catherine Ann Hall, January 1999, 29, body found at a construction site. Hardy Schmidt, May 1999, 52, abducted while jogging. Joyce Williams, November 1999, 36, found in Iberville Parish. Lillian Robinson, January 2000, 52, body discovered months later in a swamp. Marilyn Nevels, October 2000, 38, found on a levee. Johnny Mae Williams, October 2003, 45, found in a wooded area. Donna Bennett Johnston, February 2004, 43, his final victim. Residents of Baton Rouge were living in fear due to the numerous brutal unsolved homicides which appeared to be linked. Police had named Derek Todd Lee as the suspect, and his subsequent arrest allowed the residents of the city to breathe a sigh of relief. The relief was short-lived, however, when additional violent homicides were occurring while Derek Todd Lee was in prison. Given the vicious nature of the crimes and the similar conditions of the victims, law enforcement personnel in Baton Rouge clearly had 2 separate serial killers operating at the same time within the city. In a matter of months, additional homicide victims were found which had sustained substantial postmortem cutting and dismemberment. A multi-agency task force was formed specifically to resolve these murders. Random lone hairs found in various places on the victims' bodies were all consistent with having originated from the same suspect. After combing through the physical evidence, the last crime scene yielded a tire track leading away from the body. This tire track eventually proved to be the most important link to the suspect as it was a specific tire sold to only 100 or so people within the area. Law enforcement personnel submitted a reference swab from the suspect which eventually tied him to 3 victims through DNA. After his arrest, Sean Vincent, Gillis admitted to murdering 8 different women, crimes which were substantiated by him revealing where the bodies were located and the method by which they were killed. A subsequent search of his home and camera yielded pictures where he had murdered the women and kept them for hours to days, posing them in various positions, sexually assaulting them post-mortem, and dismembering them. He was sentenced to life in prison after the jury was deadlocked in the penalty phase. Number 4. Now this is a crazy story, you got to pay attention to this one. Happened way back in the day. Delphine LaLaurie, 1787 to 1849, was a wealthy New Orleans socialite and notorious enslaver known for the systematic torture and murder of enslaved people in her home. Her crimes were publicly revealed on April 10, 1834, when a fire broke out at her Royal Street mansion. The 1834 fire and discovery. The blaze. The fire was reportedly set by a 70-year-old enslaved cook who was found chained to a kitchen stove. She later claimed she set the fire as a suicide attempt to escape LaLaurie's ongoing cruelty. The attic horrors. Bystanders and firefighters discovered a locked attic containing at least 7 enslaved people who had been severely mutilated. Witnesses reported victims bound in restrictive positions, wearing spiked iron collars, and showing signs of being flayed with whips. Public outrage. After the horrors were exposed, a mob of outraged New Orleans citizens sacked and nearly destroyed the mansion. Up to 4,000 people reportedly viewed the rescued victims at a local jail to see the evidence of their suffering. 1140 Royal Street. The current mansion, often called the Haunted House, is a rebuilt version of the original structure destroyed in 1834. It has served various purposes over the years, including a school, music conservatory, and private residence once owned by actor Nicolas Cage, 2007 to 2009. Folklore versus history. While contemporary accounts confirm severe abuse, many of the more gruesome details, such as experimental surgeries or victims resembling human crabs, arose from 20th century fictionalizations and local folklore. Pop culture. She was famously portrayed by Kathy Bates in the third season of American Horror Story, Coven. Exile. Delphine and her husband, Dr. Louis LaLaurie, escaped the mob and fled to Mobile, Alabama, eventually traveling to Paris, France. Death. She lived the remainder of her life in exile in Paris, where she died on December 7, 1849, at the age of 62. Mystery. While French archives confirm her 1849 death, a copper plate discovered in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 in New Orleans in the 1930s claims she died in 1842. Her remains were allegedly exhumed in 1851 and returned to New Orleans for reinterment. No. 5 Nathaniel Robert Code Jr. remains incarcerated on death row at the Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola. Known as the Cedar Grove Killer, he is a serial killer who terrorized Shreveport, Louisiana, in the 1980s. Louisiana's longest-serving death row inmate, as of early 2026, Code has been on death row for 35 years, having been sentenced in December 1990. He is the longest-serving inmate from Caddo Parish on death row. Ongoing legal delays. Despite Louisiana's move to resume executions in early 2025, Code's execution remains stalled due to legal impediments in federal court and ongoing appeals regarding ineffective counsel. Health. Now in his early 70s, Code has reportedly faced health issues including obesity, hypertension, and hepatitis. Let me take you through some of the cases of Nathaniel Code. The Cheney Colbert family refers to a notorious quadruple homicide that occurred in Shreveport, Louisiana, on July 19, 1985. 4 people, including 3 members of the Colbert Cheney family, were brutally murdered in their home by serial killer Nathaniel Code. Victims. The victims, found bound, strangled, and stabbed at a home on East 72nd Street in the Cedar Grove neighborhood, were Vivian Cheney, 34, also known as Vivian Colbert Cheney. Jerry Colbert, 25, Vivian's brother, who was legally blind and lived with the family. Billy Joe Harris, 29, Vivian's common-law husband. Carletha Colbert, 15, Vivian's daughter. 2 younger daughters of Vivian Cheney, aged 7 and 10 at the time, were asleep in the home during the attacks and were found physically unharmed the next morning by their aunt, Shirley Johnson, who had arrived for a surprise visit from California. The perpetrator and aftermath. The murderer was identified as Nathaniel Code Jr., a serial killer responsible for at least 8 murders in the Shreveport area between 1984 and 1987. He was arrested in August 1987 after a separate triple murder where forensic evidence, specifically a palm print, linked him to the Cheney Colbert crime scene. Code was tried for the 4 Cheney Colbert murders in 1990. The trial included evidence from his other unadjudicated murders to show a pattern of behavior. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. As of recent reports, 2025, Nathaniel Code remains on death row in Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, having exhausted numerous appeals, much to the frustration of the victims' families who have awaited his execution for decades. The case has been a focal point in discussions about the length of time taken for executions in Louisiana. Family and neighbors. In 1987, he murdered his own grandfather, William T. Code, 73, and 2 young children, Joe Robinson Jr., 12, and Eric Williams, 8. Initial victim, 1984. His first known victim was Deborah Ann Ford, 25, who lived in a house directly behind his. Capture and trial. Code was arrested on August 6, 1987, after palm prints found at multiple crime scenes, including a bathtub where a victim was found, matched his own. During his 1990 trial, prosecutors presented over 100 witnesses and nearly 500 pieces of evidence. The jury took only 1 hour to find him guilty and recommend the death penalty. He has put in some appeals, but he is facing many legal challenges. His current ongoing appeals and legal challenges include ineffective assistance of counsel. Code claims his defense during the 1990 trial was inadequate. Specifically, he has previously alleged that he was overwhelmed during the trial, leading to poor legal decisions. DNA and forensic evidence. His appeals include claims regarding biological evidence, specifically hairs found at the crime scene that do not match his own. His legal team argues this evidence could have swayed the jury toward an acquittal if properly emphasized. Federal court impediments. The Caddo Parish District Attorney's Office has noted that before a death warrant can be sought, certain procedural impediments must be cleared in federal court. Challenges to execution methods. Along with other death row inmates, Code's case is affected by broader legal challenges against Louisiana's execution protocols, including a 2025 federal lawsuit seeking transparency and a review of the state's lethal injection or alternate methods. Despite Louisiana's move to resume executions in 2025, no execution date has been set for Code as of January 2026 due to these unresolved filings.